Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to another episode of the Goodcast Show. So today with me, I have a man who came from Sri Lanka, now lives in the UK. He's a writer, he's an author. He's a main coordinator for Tamil Solidarity Organization, previously known as Stop the Slaughter. He's representative also of the Committee of Workers International. Please welcome Mr. TU Senan. How are you, sir?
Hi, how are you, Nas?
Yeah, thank you for being here and taking the long trip from the UK just to come on this podcast, I assume.
Absolutely, yes, indeed.
Now, interestingly enough, you are someone who can give a lot of insight into the whole situation or the whole history of Tamils in Sri Lanka. You being there as well. So I want to start from the very beginning. Can you describe what was the situation of Tamils in Sri Lanka before the inception of the Tamil Tigers?
Right. So the Tamils in Sri Lanka, they lived there for like thousands of years. Goes a long way back in history, and they were part of the administrations under British Empire and so on and so forth. And but after the independence, also. There was a peaceful living, they were a peaceful community and etc. But at the time of the independence and after, the government that is formed, in order to maintain its power, they turned on the Tamil population to attack the minority. It's complicated to go on why it's happened and so on, because in the south there was a threat of emergence of the left-wing party called LSSP at the time. In order to control them, quite a large number of Tamils in the hill country, for example, voted for them, etc. In order to counter their influence, they turned on Tamils, but also many other reasons. I'm just giving you one reason. So hence began discriminations against the Tamil minority population in terms of numbers in Sri Lanka. And that's how kind of the demand for the separate state emerged in Sri Lanka out of discrimination on language, culture, religion, all aspects.
What sort of discrimination, the entire discriminative policies were taking place?
So for example, in the Tamil areas, they only spoke Tamil language. So they made, at one point in 1956, they introduced the Sinhala Only Act, which means that Sinhala language is the only language would be used in the government governance, for example. That's not acceptable for Tamils. Nobody knows Sinhala. We grow up not speaking in Sinhala. It's not that the Tamils don't want to learn another language, but as an administrative purposes, then it is discriminatory because it's become a second language. You have to learn in order to gain any admission into the administration, so find any job, etc. and so on. So that's one thing. And then also it carried on similar laws. At one point, the discrimination against the students took place. They introduced a quota system, standardization system, where because in the north there is not much industries existed, so they all relied on education. So they produced large number of highly qualified degree holders, etc., from the north. And because when the standardization was introduced, even once again it's a bit more complicated, then it discriminated against the northern populations where they put up certain limitations. So it's actually 30% of these students kind of not go to university after that, like who are highly qualified.
So only 30%.
Was given to
only 30%.
No, the quota was given to poor areas, etc. And so the quota, according to the quotas, so even if you are not highly qualified in certain areas, you will get an admission, which is okay. But the problem they had at the time, what they would do, these other qualified students in the north, what would they do? If they build a new universities or another job, etc., that's okay. But they're just left alone like that. They can't do anything. So these kind of discrimination continued. And at the time, of course, this is supposed to help the poor students, that particular quota system. However, it didn't actually. But the singular nationalist, Buddhist nationalist, right-wing nationalist at the time argued that Tamils are...
Buddhist nationalists?
Yeah.
Oh, I never knew that you could be a nationalist and be a Buddhist.
Like Myanmar, Sri Lanka also has the same. There are other Buddhism, which is quite violent Buddhism actually. And then Buddhist nationalists are the horror. They unleashed massive amount of horrors. To this day, it's the same thing. And they argued that the Tamils are given preferences, and the people correcting the exam papers are Tamils also Tamils, so they are kind of giving them marks, etc., which is not true. But this kind of propaganda started, and it pushed the younger generation into a corner where they have to rebel.
Now, at one point, at what point was it necessary for the Tamil Tigers to emerge? What happened that they had to come up and defend the people?
The conditions were created. The conditions were created for the emergence of militancy at the time. Remember, that's in the 60s. Like the Cuban Revolution. Lots of things happened in the 60s across the world. The world was changing. And there was a hope that we can really fight and win, etc. also existed at the time. But what happened in terms of the Tamil armed militancy, it is because of the Tamil leadership as well at the time. They promised to the Tamils that they will deliver on the democratic demands, etc. And then on the question of the national demands, for example, separate Tamil Eelam, they also kind of in a rhetoric, they supported it, but in effect, they're only concerned about going to the parliament, being, occupying the parliamentary seat and not delivering. So when they're faced with the repression from the Sri Lankan state, and there is no political representation for them existed, they took one path they know is that they organized themselves to fight. At the time also, as you know, the PLO was formed in Palestine, etc., and so on. In certain sense, modeled on it, that they created an organization called TLO. That's the first one. Tamil Liberation Organization was formed.
Okay.
It's actually modeled on that. There's a number of people call themselves Arafat, for example, named after Yasser Arafat.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. So it's following.
Yeah.
How was at this point in time, when the Tamils are facing such persecution, such limitations in the economy, what was India's involvement in this, into help mitigate this problem?
Yeah, so geopolitical tension at that time is a little bit different, Cold War period. Though India, under Indira Gandhi at the time, maintained that they are neutral, but they're not, actually. They leaned towards Soviet. So it created a lot of problems. So during the Reagan-Thatcher era in the 80s, this particular tension emerged much more sharper, where J.R. Jayawardena got elected. He's a neoliberal representation of in Sri Lanka, and he invited the Americans to open up the Voice of America and Tringo. This is an important harbor, strategically important harbor at that time, and then so the CIA also arrived and so on along with it and so on. So it created a problem for Indian government. Geopolitically, they might lose control in the South Asia, in Indian Ocean, which they consider their manner. So then, of course, in order to counter this, Indian government, their secret service called RAW, Research and Analysis Wing, they intervened and they provided weapons as well as money, cash handouts and etc. for these militants. At that time, the militants, even though they wanted to wage an armed struggle against the Sri Lankan government, they didn't have much to go with. Like, they didn't have money, they didn't have enough weapons, etc. Mainly it came from India. So the Indira Gandhi government actually armed them, basically. So that's how they intervened. They intervened in Sri Lankan politics through this militancy, used this militancy.
Which is the Tamil Tigers?
No, all of them, not just the Tamil Tigers, all of them. Not to deliver their demands, but also in order to have a say inside the Indian politics. However, they're about in the early 80s, is very politicized society in the north and east among the Tamil community, particularly in the north, were extremely politicized society. There were 36 armed organizations existed.
36 along with the Tamil Tigers?
36, yes. Tamil Tigers is one of them.
My goodness.
Yes.
I didn't know this.
Yeah. And so among them, there are a few prominent. At that time, the leading, strongest, I would argue, at the time, there is an organization called TELO, TLO after TLO, they included TELO.
Okay.
TLO. And then
everybody was inspired by one name.
That's right. Yeah. And then they actually accepted the Indian government involvement and collaborated with the Indian government. But the LTT didn't. LTT wanted the money, they wanted the weapon, etc. At the same time, they wanted to maintain the independence. So LTT did not collaborate with the Indian government.
But I thought the Indian government also provided training to the LTT, right? They were the ones who trained them in stations in India.
Indian government did provide training, not for the LTT.
Okay.
So quite a number of them went to Palestine to train as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they fought along with the Palestinians in Palestine as well.
So there is a connection between the Tamil Tigers and the
very strong
liberation.
connections.
Oh, okay.
Among the Kurdish and the Tamil Tigers and the Palestinian Liberation Organization. They trained the LTT as well. But the leadership of the LTT or section of the LTT did not go. They didn't go outside. They wanted to maintain their independence. So they didn't take part in that kind of collaboration that much compared to other organizations. There's another organization called Plot. Quite almost all the leading members of the Plot trained in Palestine.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Plot stands for?
People Liberation
Organization. It's all from the same word.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, so now the LTT are there, and one thing with LTT that is very well known across the world is they are not labeled as a terrorist organization. They were labeled as basically as freedom fighters. They were very organized. They were very well funded, even from the global Indian community, Tamil community especially. How powerful were they as an organization in their heyday?
Right. In the initial stage, they were not powerful. But then they wanted to maintain the independence. They had an extraordinary discipline as an organization compared to the rest. And with that discipline, even though they're small in number, at one point they went after the rest of the organizations, got rid of them, killed them quite a lot, and then took control of the North and East themselves. That's how the LTT emerged as the strongest organization.
Wow, okay.
And then after that, they built a formidable organization. Military as well as political wing also existed at the time. And they even had a navy, even Air Force. This is the only inverted commas terrorist organization had an Air Force. So it is built based on, because they also got a lot of support during the Indian intervention, military intervention, also the Sri Lankan army attack, etc. A lot of young people who are talented people also joined them. And they contributed their talent to organizing this organization. So it is one, freedom fighter for some and the terrorist for somebody else. We know the famous saying. Yeah. But but in the Tamil areas, they are kind of seen, not fully supported by everybody, I wouldn't say that, but at the same time, they are seen as defenders in certain sense. If they did not exist, and we can't really have a say, no voice. From that point of view, they have recruited quite a lot. Of course, forceful recruitment also take place in the later stages, but not in the early stages. So that's how they've grown into a formidable organization.
So at this point in time, then they are a formidable force. They have, as you say, they have different branches, Navy, Air Force and all that, ground and everything. And there was an Indian a retired commando who said that fighting the Tamil Tigers was incredibly difficult because it was their terrain. They were very well hidden within the whole civilian population and all that. So the Indians could not come in and fight them. But why couldn't they, were they unable to achieve their goal of having their own independent state?
See, it's very complicated. See, they built a military force, quite strong force at the time, but it's not enough. You need to have a political understanding as well. That's kind of taken a step back in the 90s, I would say, and also the late 80s. That's the problem. Because the Indian army was the fourth largest army at the time. It's not a really small army. The LTT at the time, maximum number, I don't know, about hundreds, cadres, 1,000 maybe, or 2,000. They could have been wiped out. In the 1987 period, Sri Lankan army launched a massive attack in the north called Operation Liberation. And about 10,000 plus soldiers were marching down. There's absolutely no way LTT could hold them at bay because they simply did not have enough weapon or resources to do that. At the time, they're about to lose the control. That's when Indian army came. India intervened directly. So, and then again, it's a guerrilla warfare. You just go, attack, and just escape. You cannot win in that way. Or conventional kind of direct army conflict, you can't win that either because you simply do not have enough resources. So how do you win this? You need a political strategy. That was lacking. That's what the problem was. Okay. So, but they were convinced that within the context of Sri Lanka, that they somehow can defeat the Sri Lankan army, which was true at the early stage, where the Sri Lanka was a very weak state. They did not have enough weapons or big army or etc. But when they're challenged by the LTT, India, Pakistan, Israel, starting with Israel, US, everybody helped. They armed the state. They gave all the helicopter, all the latest technology and everything, training. At one point, Israel is training the military in one side, the Palestinian training the LTT on the other side. There is an aerial photograph published by one of the journalists as well. Okay. So yeah, it's how do you fight? So how do you fight against all these states, without really building a political fight, building your allies and etc. And that's how it's failed, I think.
So that was the biggest failure. Politics was not their thing. So then we go to the most infamous tragedy, I would say, which was, I call it the genocide, which happened in Sri Lanka. Very sad, tragic, terribly tragic. Bring us back to that moment. I mean, from your eyes, from your perspective, what actually happened during that time?
Yeah, it was clear, like I just said, that it was clear that not just the Sri Lankan government, also the Indian government, all the states, West and the US and everything, they want to finish the LTT off.
Even the Indian government?
Yes, because they fought the Indian army in 87, 89 period. And of course, nobody liked the LTT, one thing. But you mentioned genocide. A lot of people do not understand exactly what happened at the time. When the Sri Lankan army decided to go on the attack, they just don't really go in there to kind of defeat the LTT. They went in there to kill. Now we see, when I say this one, in the past, people find it hard to believe. Now we see the horror in Israel, Palestine, what's going on in Gaza. For example, we can see. It was under the direct advice and training of the Israeli state, the Sri Lankan government did this operation as well. It has to be registered. They followed the same method. What happened was at the time is that 10% of the population in the north wiped out in the matter of 6 months. Actually, they destroyed everything. No trees, no hospitals, no schools, nothing left standing. They were cornered into a tiny little pocket. One side is a sea, a lagoon, a small lagoon. They were driven into the small lagoon, quite a large number of population, bombed. That's how it happened. The lagoon I'm talking about, not even shelters, nothing. So this is the horror. I mean, they argued that all of them LTTE. That's the argument. That's the narrative that we see from the Israeli government. That is the same language, everything. If you go back and then see, it's everything similar. Striking similarity you can see. So that's how it happened. It's indiscriminate killing. The children said, no, everybody died. Families wiped out completely, all members of the families, etc. and so on. So what happened at the time is mass killing. Simple as that. That's how they finish it off.
And post that, what happened to the LTT?
See, the LTT...
LTT. Sorry, what happened to them?
LTT stood there and fought. In late 2008, the war started. By March, they withdrawn from their main area in Kilnochi. They withdrawn. From our point of view, the war is over by then. LTT withdrawn. They're running. The LTT structure collapsed and everything is completely gone. They were running around, basically. So after that is chase and kill, basically. They went after to kill. They did not stop the war, did not stop the bombing, just went on the rampage, killing everybody and finish it off. Particularly wanted to cut the head off. They wanted to kill all the leaders of the LTTE, particularly Pravaran, the leader, and so on. So only when they managed to finish that off, then they called that the end of war, so-called end of war. Towards the end, large number of people surrendered to the army. They were killed. Women were tortured and sexually harassed and etc. and so on. The Channel 4 made a documentary which recorded some of the heinous crimes, but not many journalists were allowed. This particular documentary was made by smuggling out few videos here or few little evidence there, done by the military themselves.
Which military?
The Sri Lankan military. Some of the soldiers sold it to the people outside of Sri Lanka. And that's how this emerged, because nobody was allowed to go in there. No reporters, nobody. Everybody kept their silent at the time. This was like a war without witnesses. That's what it's called at the time. Nobody was allowed to witness anything. And they just wiped out. And also, not only they did that, even after they'd driven whatever the population left afterwards into a camp. They were put in a camp for a month. While they were all kept in the camp, military went and cleaned up all the places, etc., and so on, and burned down the bodies and etc., destroyed all the evidence and so on. This is systematic. I don't know. Genocide is a soft word for that. In our view, systematically cleaned up everything. This is what happened. Right. So what we have got as an evidence now is nothing. What happened to the LTT afterwards? That's it. It's finished.
Done.
So they called. They said that we surrender our weapon. From now on, we carry on political struggle, etc. But nobody was left behind to carry on these things. Of course, in the diaspora, people lived and so on. They claim to still carry on some sort of work. Well, we can discuss what is that, and we disagree with some of them, quite a lot of them. But that's how it's ended. So LTT, at one point, they surrendered in 2009. May is 17 is marked as an end of war, where on that particular day, huge number of people who surrendered with the white flag were just simply murdered.
My goodness. So, what is the current status of the Tamil population in Sri Lanka?
Right. It's one of the most militarized zone in the world is the northern Sri Lanka.
And they are all there.
It's comparable to Kashmir, for example. So they are there as long as they're just normally living there without challenging the government. They can live.
Yeah,
that's okay. If we can visit Sri Lanka tomorrow, then you can go to the north and you will not see anything. But on your way to the north, you will see huge camp, acres and acres. You will drive through a military camp. So all the big military installations exist throughout the north and part of the east. At any time, they can completely take over the whole area, the military. So the military is still there. It's still an open prison camp, some people call it. So if anybody challenges the Sri Lankan government, or anybody questions, or anybody articulate the demand for separation, or separate Tamilulam, or anything like that, they're finished. They will be arrested immediately. Not only that, they are banned from remembering who died in the war. If the university, there is some people trying to organize a remembrance last year, they were arrested, put in prison. It's banned. And then the military, there is like area where they buried these fallen cadres and etc. in the past and so on. They call it Mavir Tuilimillam, where and then military went through they bulldozed the whole area and so on. Nobody is allowed to go there and pay respect. But the relatives still there. This body is under the ground, but the relatives still alive, and they know they are relatives. They cannot pay respect or even remember them. So in many ways, and also there is now in the name of research and etc., suddenly all these different pansala, the Buddhist temples are being opened up. So it's basically cultural colonization is taking place in some part of the north, and all these things are ongoing at the moment. So nothing is fixed.
My goodness. Wow. Okay. I need a moment. That was tough. So this thing is still ongoing to that level.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, is there any possibility of the return of the LTT?
No chance of that.
No chance.
Are you talking about the armed? Yeah. There is no chance. I mean, it's also there is no case. I mean, there is need to be a political fight. Nobody. There will have to be a fight because they are still oppressed. But the armed resistance is out of the questions because it will be it will be a sacrifice of people, unnecessary sacrifice of people.
So you're saying that at this point in time in Sri Lanka, the Tamils are merely housed in a prison, in an open prison camp. They don't live life normally?
They do normal life, if you ask me, but they cannot raise their political voice. That's the problem. So as long as you go to work, do the work, come home, watch a TV or whatever it is, and go to bed, that's okay.
Okay, but other than that, if you
Other than that, you can't. If you raise political voice, for example, people like me, for example, politically active and living in North is not possible.
Not possible. You started the organization, Stop the Slaughter. What made you start the organization?
See, in 2000, like I mentioned, in 2009 March, we in the sense that people who are active in the political circles, etc., and so on, we know that the war is over. And at the moment, what is happening, I've written about it as well at the time. We know that what is going to happen is a massacre. So what we did is that we created international campaigns to stop the slaughter of Tamils by then. Before the end of so-called war, we started this particular campaign. We couldn't get any support. There were meetings in Malaysia, for example. There was a meeting in Tamil Nadu, for example. Yeah, ordinary people did protest and so on. But everybody turned the blind eye to see the end of LTTE. We couldn't really get any support whatsoever. We really struggled. By May, by May we have organized. At one point, we organized a simultaneous protest, for example, in nearly 20, 35 countries, and so on and so forth. And we thought we at least save some people, at least create certain pressure to save some people. They're dying right in front of our eyes, like we see now in Palestine, for example. And so on. So we couldn't we couldn't save a lot of people at the time, or anybody actually, I would say. They carried on the killing. So that's how it started. But by May, it's all over. It's all finished. So then we thought we cannot leave it there. The political struggle must continue. Just because you kill, we would not surrender our political voice. From the ashes of all these people killed, we will rise. That's the message we wanted to give. And that's how the Tamil Solidarity was born.
And what is the objectives? Are the objectives of the Tamil Solidarity movement?
Right. The first one of the main important thing for us is the justice for all these people is not going to be delivered by simply so-called reconciliation and giving a little bit money and so on. No. There are criminals who committed the heinous crimes still in charge, still in power. They need to, that need to be recognized. One aspect of, in terms of the war crimes. Second, all democratic rights for everybody, all the democratic rights. The third important thing is the right to nation for the Tamils, right to self-determination for the Tamil people. Of course, we are not saying we are not saying it should be enforced on them. They should have a separate land and so on. They might decide themselves that, okay, we are happy to live in Sri Lanka. It's up to them. But they have to have the right to decide. That's the thing.
The freedom of choice.
Exactly. Yeah. So we stand for all these demands and we campaign on that basis. Most importantly, we wanted to make sure the Rajapaksa regime and the family never have a power or a say in politics.
Which he has recently left. He has fled the country, right?
Yes.
Okay.
There was a big mass movement. Took place in Sri Lanka. This particular criminal was pushed out of the government, and he actually fled in fear, secretly, and so on. And then he came back. Now they still indirectly hold power. Actually, nothing much changed in terms of the power structure. So we wanted to make sure that changes forever.
Why do you think, me sitting with you now, I'm learning for the first time a lot of things, although what was reported in the news is a lot as well, but what you are telling me things about what happened is a completely different take that I have not heard. Why do you think the world turned a blind eye to what happened in Sri Lanka, concerning the Tamils?
See, the thing is, the geopolitical interest flows through Sri Lankan government. not through those who are against the Sri Lankan government. Of course, the China getting involved, the US is getting involved, India is getting involved. Everybody wants to have their say and their control in the area, right? But LTTE refused, even though they wanted support, they refused to collaborate anybody. They refused to be stooge of anybody. They are a little bit of obstacle. They need to be finished. At one point, people at the time said that it's a Chinese solution to the Sri Lankan problem, because they supplied a lot of weapon and resources to finish LTTE off. It's an obstacle that they have to remove, because these people with them in charge, you cannot simply have a geopolitical control in the northern parts of the north where China is and India is investing right now, which is not possible as long as the LTTE exists. So that's why they need to be removed. Once they're gone, it's easy life. The country is carved out between all these different powers. Part of the north almost is practically under the control of India. So that wasn't possible with the LTTE presence.
So that is why they were removed. They had to be removed. And plus, Sri Lanka is such an important, in terms of the trade location, the trade routes all go through there. It's a lot of money to be made and a lot of control about.
That's right. About 70% of the sea route goes through the Indian Ocean around that way. 70% of the world trade goes through that route. That's why it's significant, that particular route. So China, as part of their Belt and Road Initiative, wanted to build harbors, for example, in Hambantota and so on and so forth, and circle the whole India as well.
Which they have done with Sri Lanka, right? They have basically bought over the country because of their loans.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. Now, you personally, what do you aim to achieve because you are a writer, I've read your articles, they're very powerful, and you never hold back in your articles, which I love. In your book as well, you have a book written. What is your personal ambition with the Tamil Solidarity Organization?
The thing is, it's a collective ambition. My personal ambition is part of the team. Basically, it's a collective. Like I said, we don't have this utopian view, thinking that we were just going to deliver everything at this stage to the Tamils. But whatever we can win, we wanted to win. That's where we start. For example, the current Rajapaksa government, before, they're trying to organize in the diaspora also their organization. We managed to stop that happening, for example. Similarly, for example, we were involved in the campaign on the GSP plus sanctions concession given to Sri Lanka as well. And things like that. So small victories, whatever we can win, we will win, but also connect this to a larger battle to win all democratic rights, including the national rights. That's the objective, the collective objective. In this, as a personal, if you ask me what I can bring in it, it's because I actually born in Jaffna, grown up there, was part of the LGBT struggle in the past and so on and so forth. I bring my personal experience as part of it and then contribute to the collective work. Most of them grown up in Jaffna, younger people, somehow a link to either this or that militant group.
So being part of it, and I've grown up with the LTT. Definitely that was part of my upbringing as well. We heard stories, and LTT was looked up as this a very powerful force in terms of resistance and all that. Very organized. Very organized. Yeah. When you look at what's happening in Israel, in the whole Gaza Strip, do you see similarities between the fight?
Absolutely, yeah.
In terms of the organization, are they as organized as the LTTE were?
No.
It's
different in organizing methods, and also the character of the organizations are different. If we want to compare it in the early days of the PLO, yes, but not the later stages. It's a little bit of a different organization, but the suffering is same. I can't tell you how many Tamils were in tears when they look at it. It triggers them.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Because they can see themselves happening. It's same horror. They can't handle it. So many people I have to deal with, a number of people who contact, and they see this, their relatives. That's how they feel very close. Yeah.
Now, in your website, which I was going through, I mean, you are very clear about what are your ambitions and your objectives and all, fantastic there. But if I were watching this, and I feel very connected to the Tamil situation. I mean, what happened? I saw the news, and I mean, there was a sense of hopelessness for me because I was young then. I couldn't do anything. I'm in Malaysia. What can I do, right? What can I do now?
It's a very interesting question. This often comes up in this period to everybody who is listening to your podcast as well, that we have to witness it. We are helpless, actually. If we can save one life in Palestine tomorrow, there will be 100,000 people will be going from different countries to there. We can't. We can't even actually save. We watch movies like Schindler's List and all these movies where this heroic saving of all the things happen. We can't even do that.
Yeah.
We will a lot of people will sacrifice to save lives. We can't even do that. In a situation develops like that, what we can do become a huge question. It's an extremely important question you asked. I think we have to mobilize politically. That's why I'm part of an organization. And then everybody should think about it in terms of how do we mobilize. For example, there is a democracy movement here took place and so on. We haven't won. We cannot give up. That's the thing. We can't, just because we haven't won, just because they are mighty powerful and use all the powerful weapon against the innocent people, we cannot give up. The fight cannot end. Let's organize. That's the key thing. Let us come together, create political organization if it doesn't exist, or if it one exists, join them, or do something. In that way, an organized collective is a powerful weapon. I think that is what we have to create.
But in terms of immediate, like in terms of funds and all that, are there ways that people can contribute to your organization?
Yes, of course. Like we have a lot of different projects going on. Like, for example, this year, there's going to be an election campaign where there is another very racist organization called Janata Vimukti Paramana, JVP, who portray itself as a Marxist, but it's a single nationalist organization in our view. And it's taking part. And we wanted to have meetings, if possible, with those attracting progressive forces on the left, etc., to expose the reality of it in Sri Lanka. We will be undertaking that project this year in November and so on. People can contribute towards that. They can directly taking part in it, actually. They don't even have to go through the Tamil Solidarity Organization for that. So contact us. We will put in touch with you. But more than that, there are a lot of people who help. A lot of Malaysian Tamils actually helped a lot. These two communities, the Malaysian community here as well as in the Tamil Nadu, helped a lot in the past in terms of the NGOs. There's still lots of NGOs run from here, as you know, and it takes place. But it is a good thing. But they can do a bit more. They can do a political contribution as well. They should take part in the political contribution, helping out these kind of organizations as well. Organizing work as well.
Okay. Now, speaking of Malaysian Tamils, what was the sort of response, or what was the outreach that you felt from the Malaysian community, the Tamil community as well, in the work that you have been doing, such as with the Tamil Solidarity, all your political work and all?
Yeah, but we had a number of meetings, a lot of activities here as well in the past. The Malaysian Tamils are, they're very generous people. I don't know how you would see it from inside here, but they are, they never say, whatever they can help, they always helped, including protecting people at many times when people have to escape life and etc. It's a long history of connection. And in the same thing with our organization, we have a lot of connection, a lot of friends here, a lot of work we have done here as well. And we also, as the Tamil Solidarity Campaign, fully support the democracy movement here. No question asked. We do not take the Malaysian kind of repressive against the Malaysian population here, either Tamils or Chinese or Malay, or doesn't matter. We uncompromisingly take the side of those who are oppressed and so on. So from that, we have established a lot of connections and so on. It's ongoing. We want more, of course. We want more collaboration. We want more collaboration on that basis. Yeah.
Of course, I cannot speak to you without discussing the war that is ongoing now between Israel and Palestine. It's just getting worse. We see now the Iran and Israel conflict as well. I shudder to think what's going to happen to our future with everybody so trigger happy and just living life like that. In terms of the reactions that you have seen from Malaysia towards the conflict that's happened in Israel and Palestine, what do you think?
In terms of what,
Like for example, in Malaysia, for example, there's been huge boycotts of brands that support Israel and all that kind of stuff. And you know, there's been an outpouring of course, criticism and negative. We do not support this war in any way, shape, or form. But like in terms of the boycott of the local companies that have who are part of international brands who have supported. Do you agree with such movement?
No, I don't. It's not effective. What we boycott? Marks and Spencer? You boycott
Starbucks.
Starbucks? How can you boycott? Most of the Israeli companies are Western companies. Were owned by offices in West in the US and etc. They are integrated. That's one of the reasons why Israel is defended. It is their interest flows through the Israeli state. So it is ineffective. Of course, I'm not saying they shouldn't boycott anything. Individuals, what they can do, whatever they want to do, at least want to do something, but it is ineffective. But one of the important, like targeted approach is necessary when we're trying to organize. We have to work towards to make sure the military support for the Israel, arming of this particular state must stop. That's the first thing. To cut off the military supply to the Israel. That should be the target. There are a number of countries doing a lip service. Why would not cut the oil? Now, why would not cut the oil to the Israeli state? That's the thing that we have to do it. We have to raise the strategic position in terms of cut the main core. Individuals and so on responsible, yes, important, but it is a difficult task. Why not put the state, all these states pretending to defend the Palestinians in fear of their own population? Because here, for example, if the Malaysian state come up and say, oh no, we wanted to maintain certain relationship with Israel, they will be thrown out.
Yeah, definitely.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's why in fear of the population, they do a lip service. We don't want that. We want result. We want action. What kind of an action? Cut the link. It's not just boycotting individual. Do not provide the oil. Do not provide any weapons. Not a single dollar should go towards the arming of the Israeli state.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, but I have to counter with this. Is that an achievable request, though? I mean, because
it's possible.
Is it?
Yes. For example, I'm now based in London, as you know. But there we organized campaign in places where the factories where they produce military equipment, etc., that's sent to Israel. We organized a strike there. We went there, talked to them, and put the stop. So number of things. It's emerging. It's beginning to happen. So it's a targeted work. That's a big problem for the British state as well as the Israeli state. It's possible. We are going to the shipment area, etc., and say, refuse to load it. Refuse to load them. These are ordinary people who work there. They know what's happening. You cannot fool around. So this is possible. This is more effective in our view. Like I'm not buying a shirt or a sandwich in a Marks and Spencer. It's okay, but it's less effective.
It doesn't directly impact the war.
That's right.
Yeah, it's sort of. I also have the same view because it impacts other people. It doesn't matter, right? So your organization now, it was started in Sri Lanka. I mean, in the UK,
in the
right?
diaspora, we cannot function in Sri Lanka, unfortunately.
Sorry, in the UK, right? You started up in the UK now. How big has it grown?
You see, the diaspora population is small, as you know. Within the diaspora population, we have a support base, but it's a cadre organization. We have hundreds of members, less than 100 members, but hundreds of supporters. And that's it. That's the strength of the organization. But that's how the nature is right now. Because it's a political organization trying to be active. It's not many people can see it's happening at any time soon, right? That's the problem that we face with. But it's still very significant from our point of view. It's still very important.
Okay. Now, in terms of you, I always wonder. I assume that you're on the left. You're a socialist. Yeah.
Absolutely, uncompromising.
Okay. Calm down. Every socialist is like that. I always try to be careful. In fact, this podcast was started on the backs of many helpful socialists who came on and did interviews.
That's right.
So
Good.
Thank you to the left. I've always had a bone to pick with the socialists on the left. Although I am a member of the Socialist Malaysian Party, but why is it that I mean, do you feel that some of the policies and the requests or some of the movements that you're on, I'm not talking about war, I'm talking about normal day to day, even in democracy and all that, that they can be more utopian than achievable? Do you think that the left suffers from this, that they sometimes have certain requests, like especially the local socialists I see, some of their requests made during the election campaigns and all that are not pragmatic?
See, it's another important question, I think. See, socialism is not going to be achieved tomorrow. If anybody tell you that socialism is going to be born tomorrow, they're lying. It could happen. We cannot predict future, but as it stands, it's not possible. But now, then your question about there are immediate demands at stake. Like at the moment, there are a number of things need to be solved now, right? Do we just not worry about that and just worry about something that's going to happen in the future to the utopian society? We cannot do that. At the same time, we have to understand all sorts of oppressions, either it's a caste-based or gender-based or any all sort of oppressions have connections. They don't act independently. They all connected. They're all connected to the system. If you want to really root out all the oppression, of course you have to root out the system. So the task for the political activist, forget about the socialist at this stage, is to win immediate demands. Not only winning the immediate demands, connected to actually finally win the battle. That's the task, right?
Yeah.
That's where a number of socialist organization fails.
Yes.
So that's what we would argue is that you some sort of transitional program where you fight to win the immediate demands without engaging in that one. What's the point of being a socialist, right? In front of your eyes, something is happening. You've got to fight it, right? Yeah. And then you can connect that to the wider, bigger goal of actually changing. Because we know that you can win this battle right now, but it won't last. When you're stronger, they might throw things at you and say, look, we give you. But then once they get stronger, they will take it back. That's the story. So that's what we need to finally change it as well. Somehow we have to connect it. That's an art.
So are you saying that the left should be more politically savvy, as opposed to more activist? They should balance it with a bit of political.
Absolutely. Activist with an idea is the important thing. Without idea, just being an activist running around is not going to succeed anything. At the same time, just having an idea alone is not enough. You have to do the work. So I would argue activism with the idea is the powerful weapon.
Okay.
Yeah.
In Malaysia, one thing I notice is that the activism comes with just a lot of what is being done wrong. Is pointing out the mistakes, but never pointing out solutions. Proper pragmatic solutions.
Right, yeah.
So that is what I think in Malaysia the left has always struggled because of that. Like they do not come out in terms of okay, yes, the problems we all agree with. Yes, we all know the problems very well, but how do we solve it? And what do we do that can work in the short term as opposed to long term?
Well, I agree with you, but I would like to qualify one thing here is that the left in Malaysia is struggling. Left in Malaysia is not a big force.
No.
There are many factors why it's the case. So even though they are smaller, if they're bigger and if they had an experience of power or getting near the power, yeah, these critiques would work, right? At this stage, it's a bit of a harsh critique, of course. But we would argue that in order for them to grow and etc., of course, they need to develop clear perspective, clarity of understanding. It's lacking, actually. That is true. I agree with you. But that should be there. But at the same time, it is still a small force. We need to gain more support for that. The history of Malaysia, if you go back in the history, had a very strong history of the left in the past, and they consciously suppressed, consciously defeated, and big massacre took place here as well.
I hope I'm not coming off too much of a capitalist because my history is more to communism. Because my grandparents come from Kerala, which is the world's, I think, first democratically communist elected state. Right? I think that's to get it correct.
That's Bengal and Kerala.
Yeah, it's a bit of a tongue twister, and I'm all for the left as well. But just one last one on the left before I let you go is: do you think that the left needs to evolve in this particular sense, right? I've always felt this, that the left lack the appeal to the society is because they lack proper packaging. They don't package themselves well. They don't brand themselves well, for a lack of a better word, and they like to stick to the old age of, you know, the way, for example, the whole ruffle look. Do you think that they should adapt to suit the nuances of today's voters' requirement?
See, this is one of the. Let me put it straight. There's no two way of saying it. It's one of the misconceptions, I would argue.
Okay.
See, in science, in physics, for example, we know the fundamental laws for four different forces, the fundamental elements, and etc. The foundational aspects of forces and elements, etc. It's foundation same, you know, like it's. But you can build complications, you know,
with those
like all, with that. Similarly, the society is very complex, obviously, but it's also governed by certain fundamental laws, right? That's not changed. That is still there. It is still true. However, the challenge for the left is that, of course, have a clarity of understanding of the foundational aspects and laws that governs a society and etc. At the same time, develop a strategy for the current period. That's what you're trying to get to, right? Do not stick to the strategy about 200 years ago.
Yeah.
There was used to be joke goes around in the past, probably in Kerala as well. When it rains in Moscow, they will hold an umbrella here in Kerala. So that won't work. Okay. So they have to develop. They have to develop a strategy that would be suitable. For example, now in Malaysia, it demands a clarity of strategy and so on. I wouldn't put it in a packaging way or anything like that. But they are lacking an ability to create and understand the current motion. Where does it come from is their lack of understanding of the foundational basics. So how things functions, the basics of what you call left is a Marxist ideas, or the basics of what's the governing laws of the society. The foundation is lacking. That's why they could not build a proper house.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Now, before we bring this to an end, if to everyone watching, of course, earlier on you brought up the story. I mean, you're talking about what happened in Sri Lanka, which was a very, very powerful story and a tragedy, definitely. And I like the fact that why I rushed when again, big shout out to Yuva to actually basically asking you to come on the podcast, because when he told me about you, I said I have to have you on. I have to have you on simply
Thanks
because
for having me.
Yeah, because I mean, what happened was, I mean, I have no words.
It's horrendous. Yeah.
It's horrendous, and I couldn't do anything then, and I would like to do something now, even in a small scale. I would like to. So maybe you can share links or where people can go to in order to support your organization, which is doing a great thing for Tamils in Sri Lanka.
Yeah, it's tamilsolidarity.org website. You can contact us. You can contact Yuva here. He's also part of the Tamil Solidarity, and so on, and collaborate with us in every way, politically, whatever we can. But one more thing is that you mentioned is that, see, I feel guilty now that I'm not able to do much. I do a lot of things. I take part in every single protest that takes place in relation to the Palestinian struggle. And like I said, involved in organizing in various work as well. But I still feel guilty. We can't save these people. We just letting them die in mass right in front of. I don't think they should feel guilty. I mean, what you could have done, you couldn't have done anything. That's the whole point. You shouldn't feel guilty. You feel helplessness. But the contribution is that we refuse to accept this. That is important. You refuse to accept this as not in our name. That's the first step. Not in our name. One. The second thing is that, like you just now said, is that taking part in activities here and fighting for the democracy here, for example, the right in Malaysia, is same as fighting for the rights of the Tamils in Sri Lanka, as well as the fighting for the Palestinians in Sri Lanka. Wherever we fight to create a better society, everybody benefits. That's the whole point as well, I would say, is that we have to create a little bit of, I wouldn't say positive twist, but we shouldn't let these things depress us and then silence us. We should rise above it and then trying to make our voice more. The more you kill, the more voice you will hear from us. It should be the message. More organized we will be is the message that we have to give. Otherwise, they win by killing. So that's the thing, to different and understand. I urge your audience as well who are listening to come to that kind of understanding, contribute at least part of your life to the society. I know it's a very hard period for a lot of people and etc. At least contribute a little bit of that for the benefit of the society, do something as well. And that contributes towards everywhere. Everything is connected, right? In that sense, if there is a powerful organization here in Malaysia existed, for example, which would stand firmly for human rights, etc., it would have strengthened the Palestinians' cause as well as the Tamils' cause further. Yeah.
Wow, fantastic. I think that's a very powerful note to end this, because in Malaysia, I think before this, I was a bit I wouldn't say critical, but I was a bit bewildered by some people who were supporting or were actually supporting all the protests against the war in Gaza and all that. But my sort of view on it was, how come nothing was done when the same thing was happening in Sri Lanka? There was no protest, there were no movements here. But now what you're saying is more celebrating humanity must be the key.
That's right. Win the rights, everywhere. But it's not true, actually. The Malaysian population, you would go around and talk to lots of people. It's not they endorsed it.
Endorsed what?
Endorsed, or they didn't come out en masse and made a big protest.
Yeah.
But nobody accepted it.
Of course, no one did.
Yeah,
no one did.
It's still very strong among the population.
Yeah. It is very strong. Yeah. So thank you again. We'll bring this to the end. Thank you for being here. I hope you've had a good time.
Nice talking to you.
Thank you, and I hope you enjoy your stay in Malaysia. So for the rest of y'all, thank you for joining in. And if you guys want to support the organization, please go to tamilsolidarity.org. There are many tabs where you can learn about the organization. You can make contributions as well and support their struggle and support of Tamils and humanity across the world. So thank you so much, sir, and I'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye. Thank you so much, guys.